What a lot of people are talking about right now could end up shaping not just the Buccaneers next season, but the direction of this franchise for the next 4 or 5 years. And what's interesting is this conversation didn't start because of a loss, an injury, or a blockbuster signing. It started because there's a decision Tampa Bay can't put off forever. When it's time to figure out what comes next for the leader of this offense, what's the smartest move? Lock him up with a long-term deal, or use every tool the NFL gives you to buy more time before committing a massive amount of money? Before we get into it, I want to hear from you. If this decision were entirely up to you, what would you do? Extend him right away, or wait one more season? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is one of those topics that really splits the Bucs fan base. Over the last few days, an analysis published by Heavy, based on comments from NFL insider Mike Florio, brought up a possibility that hasn't been discussed enough. Instead of handing out a massive contract extension as soon as the opportunity comes up, the Buccaneers could use the franchise tag if negotiations don't naturally come together. And only after laying out that entire scenario do we get to the name at the center of this conversation: Baker Mayfield. Let's make one thing crystal clear from the start. This doesn't mean Tampa Bay has decided to use the franchise tag. It also doesn't mean Baker is anywhere close to leaving the team. What we're talking about is a scenario that's completely allowed under NFL rules, and it's worth discussing because it involves long-term roster building, salary cap management, and the future competitiveness of this football team. Whenever the conversation turns to a quarterback, emotions usually take over. After all, we're talking about the guy who leads the offense, stands in front of the cameras after every game, gets all the praise when the team wins, and takes the heat when it loses. But a front office can't make decisions based on emotions alone. It has to look at how every contract affects the salary cap for years to come. And that's exactly where this debate starts getting really interesting. These days, a top-tier quarterback can easily cost $50 million a year, sometimes even more. That completely changes how you build a roster. Every massive extension means less money available to keep key players at other positions. It could mean letting an important defender walk, moving on from a respected veteran, or passing on a free agent who could have made the team better. Jason Licht has built his reputation by avoiding rushed decisions. Over the last several years, the Buccaneers have stayed competitive because they've found the right balance between paying their stars and maintaining quality depth across the roster. That philosophy is a big reason why this team kept competing for the NFC South even after Tom Brady retired. But there's another side to this conversation that's just as compelling. Finding a reliable quarterback is one of the hardest things to do in the entire NFL. Some franchises spend 10 years searching for one. Others burn first-round draft picks without finding the answer. Some throw huge contracts at veterans who never live up to expectations. Tampa Bay knows exactly what that feels like. For years, quarterback was the biggest question mark on this team. That's exactly why Baker Mayfield has earned so much respect inside the organization. When he arrived, not many people believed he could completely revive his career. There were questions about his consistency, his ability to lead a playoff-caliber roster, and even whether he would remain a long-term starter in this league. Instead of answering those questions with words, he answered them on the field. He led the offense, embraced the responsibility, won meaningful football games, and brought stability back to a position that felt completely uncertain after Brady's departure. But the NFL operates differently from almost every other sport. It rarely pays players strictly for what they've already done. Front offices always have to answer one uncomfortable question: will this player still perform at the same level 3 or 4 years from now? That question matters at every position, but it carries even more weight when you're talking about contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's why some analysts believe the franchise tag deserves serious consideration. From that perspective, Tampa Bay would get one more full season to evaluate Baker before making a massive long-term commitment. The team would maintain control of its quarterback while seeing if his level of play remains consistent, especially since the NFL changes quickly and one outstanding season doesn't always guarantee another. From a financial standpoint, that argument makes sense. If Baker proves once again that he's playing at a high level, the organization could negotiate an extension with much greater confidence. If his performance drops significantly, the Buccaneers avoid being tied to an enormous contract for years. But that strategy comes with a price. And that price might not show up immediately on the salary cap. Around the league, the franchise tag is often viewed by players as a sign that the organization still isn't fully committed. Instead of hearing, "You're our quarterback for the next 5 years," the message can sound more like, "We still need more proof before we're ready to invest in you." That's difficult for any player. For the leader of your locker room, it's even bigger. Not long ago, Baker himself made it clear he wasn't happy with how some of the contract discussions unfolded. He admitted he felt disrespected during certain negotiations and decided to put those conversations on hold so he could focus entirely on football. That changes the entire conversation, because now we're not talking only about money. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about trust between a player and the organization. And trust is one of the most valuable things a contender can have inside its locker room. Think about it for a second. You deliver results. You become a leader. You earn the respect of your teammates. Yet you still feel like the organization isn't completely convinced you're the guy. That's naturally going to create some frustration. Even if Baker handles it professionally, it's hard to believe a situation like that wouldn't leave some scars in the relationship between player and franchise. At the same time, it would also be unfair to say the front office would automatically be making the wrong decision. Running an NFL franchise means making difficult choices every single day. The salary cap doesn't forgive mistakes. Just look around the league. Several teams are dealing with major financial problems today because they handed out massive contracts believing certain players would maintain elite production for 5 or 6 years. That doesn't always happen. Injuries happen. Performance goes up and down. Head coaches change. Offensive coordinators leave. And what once looked like a fantastic investment can suddenly become one of the biggest financial burdens on the roster. That's why this conversation deserves a level-headed approach instead of an emotional one. There's a very strong argument for extending Baker immediately. There's an equally strong argument for waiting a little longer. But maybe the most overlooked part of this discussion is something else entirely. Where exactly are the Buccaneers in their championship window? This roster still has plenty of talent to compete in the NFC. The defense has playmakers. The offense has quality weapons. The coaching staff knows this group inside and out. But every championship window eventually closes. And that's where the biggest question comes in. Is it really worth creating any contract tension while this team is trying to maximize its opportunity to compete? Or would it be smarter to get the deal done now, give your quarterback long-term security, and allow everyone inside one Buc place to focus entirely on winning football games? That may ultimately be the biggest decision Jason Licht faces. It won't just be another contract. It'll be a statement about how the Buccaneers plan to build their future. If they extend Baker right away, they're telling the league he's unquestionably the face of this franchise moving forward. If they decide to wait, they're prioritizing financial flexibility and protecting themselves against long-term risk. Neither decision is crazy. Neither one guarantees success. And maybe that's exactly why this conversation is so fascinating. In the NFL, there's rarely a perfect answer. There are only decisions that make sense in the moment, and years later we find out whether they were the right ones. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield still controls the most important part of this entire story: what he does on Sundays. If he puts together another outstanding season, the franchise tag conversation will probably fade away on its own. If his play takes a step back, the front office will have even more reasons to be cautious. At the end of the day, everything still comes down to what happens between the lines every Sunday. And maybe that's the most fascinating part of this entire story. Before the contracts, before the huge paychecks, and before all the salary cap calculations, there's one thing that still matters most in the NFL: production. Now I want to hear from you. If you were the Buccaneers general manager, would you lock Baker Mayfield into a long-term extension as soon as possible, or would you use the franchise tag to buy one more year of evaluation? Let me know down in the comments, because I honestly don't think Bucs Nation will ever be completely united on this one.